Daniel sat across from the man known as the Zen Master, a former CEO of a famous tech company in Silicon Valley who had suddenly vanished from the business world to live in seclusion in the mountains of California. Meeting him wasn't easy, but Daniel had taken a flight, driven up winding mountain roads, and hiked for half a day just to reach the simple wooden cabin. He was certain that if anyone could help him find answers, it was this man. Daniel began to speak. "I have a good job, or at least it looks that way from the outside. I'm a manager at a big company, 6-figure salary, but I wake up every morning with this heavy feeling. I don't find meaning in what I do anymore. It's just meetings, KPIs, and deadlines." The Zen master nodded gently, listening in silence. "I have a family. My wife is kind, intelligent. We have 2 lovely kids. But lately, I feel the distance between us growing. We live in the same house, but it feels like we're strangers. I feel like a bad husband and a helpless father." Daniel lowered his head, his eyes showing clear exhaustion. "I'm not poor. I have a decent apartment in Brooklyn, an okay car, and we go on a few vacations each year. But even with all of that, I still feel anxious, like I'm missing something important in life." He paused, then gave a faint, bitter smile. "I know, it probably sounds like I'm complaining about things most people would dream of having. But I honestly feel lost. I don't know what I'm living for anymore." The Zen master looked at him for a long moment, then said gently, "You've just described 83 problems." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" "We all have 83 problems," the master said. "Whether you're a CEO or a grape farmer, whether you live in Manhattan or in the forest, whether you're rich or poor, there are always problems. You might solve one, but another will take its place. You're not the only one who feels this way. Maybe you're just the first to go this far to try and escape it." Daniel sat in silence, his mind a swirl of confusion. He had come here hoping for direction, for advice, maybe even a formula. But instead, he had just been told his problems weren't the exception, they were the rule. And it seemed like everything was only just beginning. Daniel sat in silence for several minutes after the words, "You've just described 83 problems." The air in the cabin was so still he could hear the wind brushing through the pine trees outside. "You mean, all the things I told you, work stress, marital tension, this feeling of being lost, those are just normal?" Daniel asked, half surprised, half annoyed. The Zen master smiled and nodded gently. "Not just normal, they're inevitable. Every person carries their own 83 problems in life. It's part of being human." Daniel shook his head. "But what if I try harder, if I work more diligently, learn to be a better father, invest in my marriage, exercise, meditate? Surely I could fix most of them, right?" "Maybe," the master replied. You might improve some things, but once you've cleaned up one problem, another will take its place. Today it's work. Tomorrow it's your health. This year it's your marriage. Next year it's aging parents, rebellious kids, economic uncertainty, losing someone you love. Daniel let out a long breath. So in the end, all this effort towards self-improvement is pointless? It's not pointless, the master said, his eyes lighting up. It helps you learn how to live better with your 83 problems. But no one lives a life without them. Those who try to escape that truth with money, success, social media, or even extreme meditation eventually end up disappointed. He paused, poured Daniel a cup of hot tea, then continued. You know, I once had everything people dream of. And one day I realized I'd spent my whole life trying to solve life like it was a math problem. But life isn't something to be solved. It's something to be lived, to be experienced even in its messiness, its confusion, and its pain. Daniel took a sip of tea. He didn't argue anymore. Part of him felt a strange sense of relief. The pressure to fix everything had eased. But another part still couldn't quite grasp it. He asked, "So you're saying I just have to live with all this? Forever? There's no way out?" The Zen master looked at him with calm, steady eyes. You don't have to escape. You just have to stop fighting reality. The 83 problems, they are what they are. And they always will be. Daniel sat still. That sentence struck something deep inside him. Not a sense of defeat, but a truth he had always resisted. Life isn't waiting to be perfectly arranged. It's just waiting to be lived even when it's messy. Daniel set the teacup down, his eyes quietly drifting toward the wooden window frame, where the golden light of late afternoon filtered through the still branches outside. He had come a long way, carrying the hope that this place, this man, would give him an answer. But so far, all he had received was a truth he didn't want to hear, that everyone has problems, and they don't go away. And then, in a moment he could no longer hold back, Daniel exploded. So what did I come all the way here for? Just to be told that my life is always going to be a mess? His voice rose, laced with frustration and disappointment. The Zen master didn't react. He sat still, as if Daniel's outburst were nothing more than a breeze passing through, unable to disturb anything within him. Daniel went on, his tone sharp, I thought you had the answer. I thought you figured something out after giving everything up. But if all you've got is nothing can be done, then why did you leave it all behind? A long silence filled the room. The Zen master slowly lifted his eyes to meet Daniel's and spoke in a calm, steady voice. I can't help you with the 83 problems. But maybe I can help you with the 84th. Daniel blinked. The 84th problem? That's right, the master nodded. The 84th problem is, you don't want to have any problems at all. The room seemed to settle. Daniel sat motionless, not angry anymore, only struck by the quiet crack of something opening in his mind. You see, the master continued, the deepest suffering in life doesn't come from any one specific problem, it comes from our resistance to having problems in the first place. We think that if we live right, work hard, think positively, then everything will fall into place. And when it doesn't, we feel wronged, disappointed, hurt. The desire to have no problems, that's the root of the pain. Daniel stayed quiet. All his efforts chasing success, fixing his marriage, searching for balance suddenly didn't seem wrong, but incomplete. Something had always been missing, acceptance. Not surrender. But the willingness to stop demanding that life always be easy, tidy, perfect. The master added, when you let go of the 84th problem, the other 83 stop feeling like a burden. They're just life. Sometimes messy, sometimes uncomfortable, but also colorful, and deeply worth living. Daniel exhaled. But this time, it wasn't exhaustion, it was the feeling of finally, truly breathing. Daniel sat quietly in the small wooden cabin, as if time itself had paused. The Zen master's words still echoed in his mind. The 84th problem is that you don't want to have any problems at all. It sounded simple, but it ran so deep that it brought all of his thoughts to a halt. And then, he began to understand. It wasn't the problems themselves that caused his suffering, it was the belief that he shouldn't have them. He had been living as if, by trying hard enough, doing everything right, he could solve life like a work project. And now, he saw that very belief had been the biggest problem all along. So, Daniel asked, his voice steadier now, what do you do when you face your own struggles? Don't you also have your 83 problems? The Zen master smiled. I still do. I'd been seriously ill. I've lost people I loved. I've felt lonely. I've even doubted this very path I chose. But I no longer get surprised or angry when difficulties arise. I don't ask, why is this happening to me? I ask, what is this here to teach me? He stood up and walked out to the wooden porch, where the sun was beginning to dip below the tree line. Daniel followed. See the sun, the master said. It rises and sets every day. But people wish it could stay up forever, warm, bright, high in the sky. We want the light, but not the darkness. But if there were no night, how would we ever cherish the dawn? Daniel watched the fading light. He thought about the past few years, how often he had run from negative feelings, how often he pretended to be fine, how often he felt guilty simply for not being happy. You don't need to be strong all the time, the master continued. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to show up for life as it is, without resistance, without judgment. But if I accept everything as it is, Daniel asked, won't I become passive? Acceptance isn't giving up, the master replied. Acceptance is the most solid ground from which real change can begin, a change that comes from understanding, not from panic or resistance. A soft breeze passed through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth from the morning rain. Daniel said nothing. But something inside him had settled into a deeper layer, a place where the worries were still present, but no longer in control. For the first time in years, he felt no need to seek one more answer. Maybe life wasn't something to be solved after all. Maybe it was simply meant to be lived fully, even in its messiness. The next morning, as the first light filtered through the trees, Daniel woke, not to an alarm, not to a to-do list waiting for him. He woke simply because he wanted to feel the new day. It was such a small thing, and yet something he had long forgotten in the rush of life. The Zen master was making tea on the porch. He didn't ask Daniel if he had slept well, or whether he had figured things out. They simply sat in silence, watching the morning mist fade from the branches. Daniel was the one to speak first. "I think I understand now," he said. "I'm going back to New York. Back to work, back to my family, back to all the things that once felt so heavy. But this time, I won't try to fix everything." The Zen master looked at him and smiled. "You'll live with your 83 problems, instead of fighting them." Daniel nodded. "And let go of the 84th. "Exactly," the master said. "You'll still have hard days. There will still be arguments, setbacks, and unnamed sadness. But if you can accept those things as part of the journey, they won't break you anymore. They'll just be ripples on the surface of the lake." Daniel paused, then asked, "But what about happiness? If I stop trying to eliminate pain, where will I find joy?" The master answered slowly, "Happiness doesn't come from removing problems. It comes from being fully present within them and still finding peace. It's when you notice a moment of warmth in the middle of chaos. When you laugh with your child during a hectic day. When you hold your wife's hand and don't need to say a word. Happiness isn't the prize at the end of the road, it's scattered all along the way, if you're willing to notice it." Daniel smiled. The words didn't feel like some abstract philosophy anymore. Now, they were a quiet map, not promising paradise, but gently pointing toward how to live each day in the real world, with all its mess and all its beauty. Just before he left, Daniel turned and asked, "What if I forget? What if one day I get pulled back into the chaos and start trying to solve everything again?" The Zen master looked at him, eyes narrowing with a playful smile. "Then remember, there's still the 84th problem. Daniel nodded. He turned and walked away from the little wooden house. He didn't take with him answers to every problem in life. But he carried something even more precious. The freedom of no longer needing life to be free of problems. And that was the beginning of something new.